In a world where Rockstar certainly doesn't need any help in the money department, and Blizzard confirms the existence of phones, this is Sick and Wired. Hello everybody, welcome back to Sick and Wired, the exclusive Sick Critic podcast. My name is Brandon, I am a staff writer here at Sick Critic, and I'm joined by Will.
Hello. How is everybody?
Another staff writer of ours, and then a third staff writer, Peter, is joining us today.
Hello.
And we have a lot to get through today, as usual. Gaming industry is always busy, but first of all, what are we playing? We've got to be playing some new stuff this week. Peter, why don't you start us off?
Well, nothing new really popped up, but the new PlayStation Plus games went online, and I played this cute little indie game called Roundabout, and you play as this limo that's constantly spinning, and you have to traverse through these little levels, and there's cheesy 70s FMVs with really crappy acting. It's pretty funny. So
all right.
I'm enjoying that.
Some good indie titles. And Will, how about you? What are you playing?
Well, I've just been playing a little Octopath Traveler on the Switch. I actually think it's a masterpiece at this point. But yeah, that's about it. I haven't really had a lot of time to play games, but overall, I've just been playing Octopath Traveler and Spider-Man.
Oh, cool.
Perfect. Classic games. I've been chipping away at Red Dead Redemption 2 still. It's taken me some time, but it's getting done. Other than that, if you've listened to at least a couple of our Sick and Wired podcasts before, you know that I am a huge Paladins fan. Huge Paladins fan. I think it's the best game.
Yeah,
but
really fun, actually.
I have so much fun in Paladins, especially as Bomb King. Ooh, I have so much fun. But anyway, that's a different topic. We discussed a lot of Red Dead Redemption 2 last week, so I won't get deep into that. But it is kind of it starts to it does a little normal curve kind of in terms of the excitement. It started off a little slow, and then it's kind of peaking and then falling off a little bit, but still a great game. But let's jump into the news since we've got a lot to cover. So first off, we have the PlayStation Classic. These games I don't think are what anybody really wanted out of a PlayStation Classic. There's so many titles missing.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think on that?
Well, for one, I can understand the lack of Spyro and Crash since Activision recently re-released them as remakes on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. But for other titles like Symphony of the Night not being absent, yeah, I can get why it's not there since it recently came out on the PS4, but honestly, I don't think that's a really good excuse since you can still get on the PS3 and other platforms, so why not the PlayStation Classic?
Well, I think the problem is that sure they released it for they did a sort of re-release, if you will, for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One and whatnot, but I mean there's a certain these classic consoles they're almost always going to be targeted towards a certain niche of gamers who miss the good old days. So they want to go back and they want to be able to play some of their favorite games the way they remember them. Yeah. And so I don't understand why it would be a problem releasing it for the PlayStation Classic and the PlayStation 4. But the PlayStation Classic is a little more retro, if you will.
Right. I think the Classic does have its own sort of market.
Yeah, and there's some actually... Oh, wait.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just said I think the Classic does have its own sort of market that the PlayStation 4 can't really get to. I sort of agree with that.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, some of these games, you know, that it gets really, when Nintendo did um their Nintendo Entertainment System classics, it's a lot easier for them, because for most of the games um that Nintendo could put on any kind of system of theirs, for the most part, with the exception of the most recent Switch, it's all Nintendo all the time. And so it's much easier for them to grab the licenses because they have the licenses. But when you get into licensing stuff with different companies, where you've got Sony and PlayStation, whose console it's on, mixed with, you know, this publisher over here working with this developer over here, so you've got these three different companies all kind of clashing, and then of course whatever parent companies might own any of them. So it gets a little hairy when it comes to these these consoles that cater more towards third party games. So it's
Yeah, and there are some actually pretty crappy games on there. Like Battle Arena Toshinden is like one of the first PlayStation games on there, and it really doesn't age well in comparison to like Tekken 3, which is also on the device. And there's also the first Rainbow Six game, which also aged
right.
really poorly.
Yeah,
And
there
yeah,
a lot of a lot of people have complained a little bit about exactly what is the why are we seeing so many of these games where we're like, okay, what even is that? Like, who played this? So it's really it's no wonder that the PlayStation Classic so far has been underwhelming. We discussed this actually a few weeks ago when we first kind of talked about the news of the PlayStation Classic, and I think we all agreed that it was going to be too hard to like get all the get all of the classic games that you really wanted on there because of these licensing issues, and so they filled the spots with, like you were saying, Peter, with basically kind of crap games that no one really cared about that much.
hmm
But you know, let's get into, let's keep this train rolling. We've got GTA 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2, two Rockstar titles, both breaking huge milestones in their respective areas in terms of sales and units sold. So let's talk a little bit about that. Why don't we? Peter, I know you were kind of the expert, if you will, on these milestones. I didn't even hear about them until just today.
yeah. Red Dead Redemption 2 actually exceeded Red Dead Redemption 1 sales in a matter of like a little over um a week, which is actually pretty surprising since Red Dead Redemption is a rather niche game in comparison to like GTA 5, um, which, speaking of which, sold over 100 million units, which makes it like the second or third best-selling game of all time, which is mind-boggling. Since I mean,
With
you
with a
always
hun-
knew
with a
GTA.
with 100 million, it'll GTA 5, that'll place it in third place, right under Minecraft, which is like at 150 something million right now. And honestly, if GTA 5 continues to have the run it's having, it may still take a little while, but I could see eventually GTA 5 getting to those numbers. I think it could happen with how regularly it's updated. Um, but 50 million is no small potatoes, though. But I think if anyone could do it, Rockstar might be able to. But but Red Dead Redemption 2, um, really huge game, and it's so, man, it's so interesting how people looked back at the original Red Dead Redemption. That's, to some people, that's considered one of the greatest games of all time because of the atmosphere that's in it, and the characters, and just the overall, the fact that you don't really see a whole lot of quality westerns in the gaming industry. But now all of a sudden, Red Dead Redemption 2 is just gonna blow it right off its mark. And Red Dead Redemption 2, do we know the number for how many units it sold?
17 million.
That's pretty good.
17 million. Wow, that is. Those are numbers that games hope to reach in a span of their entire lives. Sometimes, it's a crazy number.
Yeah. Rockstar is just like the juggernaut developer, and they proved it with GTA 5's insane numbers. So.
Oh yeah, Rockstar's been proving its merit for a while now, and they've definitely found kind of like their identity, I would say. But yeah, so that's all good. Now the another piece of news we've got is the PlayStation Now accounts are actually 52% of the revenue for the gaming subscription services. It's 52% of the revenue. What do we think there? That's a pretty large chunk, no?
Yeah, especially when you consider like with EA Access and Xbox Game Pass sort of like being the more commonly talked about services. And when everyone says like, "Oh, PS Now is a failure," no one's talking about it. Like, it's making like $250 million in just one quarter, so I think Sony's pretty happy about that.
Sony has gone crazy ever since PS4. It's just, well, really PS3. They were pretty big too, but PS4's been I think has been their big one. And if there's any console that's going to go beyond their success with PlayStation 2, I think it's going to be PlayStation 4. But it's Sony just keeps finding ways to make it work. They just as I think they're probably if you look at the three kind of the triangle of console developers, if you will, you have Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo. As far as business goes, I think Sony definitely makes more right decisions than any of the other ones. They definitely, I feel like they know their audience a lot better. They just seem so much sounder, a lot less entropy there. They seem to have it down to a science almost at this point. Will, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I do, like, I can see where they are getting the massive sort of audience from, like, because they put it on PC, right? With the PS Now. I mean, I could see where they're getting the big numbers from. I mean, I'm kind of happy. Like you said, Sony is going crazy, and I just feel like they do more risque stuff when they have that level of success. But that's just my opinion.
They're definitely the leaders of the gaming industry right now. I think they're at the front, and everyone else is kind of following suit right now. But I mean they just. I mean, what else can you say? I feel like they just know how to make their fans happy for the most part. They know what gamers want. Especially when it comes to the PlayStation Now. I think they do a great job in comparison to Xbox and their game streaming service. I think that which I think they're only 20%, right? Is that right?
Right.
Yeah, around that.
PlayStation Now is just things like I think part of it is that they have so much to work with in terms of some first party titles, whereas at Xbox we could go on forever about their first party titles and the lack thereof, but PlayStation Now definitely has a lot to work with, and it shines. It really does. You can see it.
Yeah.
But Next, we've got early Black Friday gaming deals. I know this is something that again Peter wanted to touch on a little bit. He's got a little insider information for us, if you will.
Yeah, there's pretty crazy deals going on right now. Particularly with the PS4. There's a 1 terabyte Spider-Man bundle that goes for $200. So basically, you're getting the PS4 for 149, along with the Spider-Man game, and you get like a pretty sizable storage. So that's a really good deal.
Oh God.
I might buy myself another Spider-Man game attached to a PS4 soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And PSVR, I've seen some deals where it goes for like 149, and
Ooh, now
that come
that's something that I'd be interested in. Because VR is good VR. Like when you think the top tier VR systems, which are basically just PlayStation VR and then HTC Vive, which blows even that out of the water. But they're not cheap. They're pretty expensive. So it's always nice around these holiday seasons to get those kinds of deals on some of the more advanced hardware that normally is just a little too much outside of your budget.
Yep, and Xbox is getting some good deals too. Xbox One X is $100 off in Walmart,
Jeez.
and yeah, and you can get like a couple good games with it, like Red Dead Redemption 2 looks spectacular on that system.
And then, are there anything you can think of that you're like, but if there's one thing this Black Friday, like I want to make sure I pick up, it's gonna be this one.
Yeah, I might be I'll have to like, of course, get like a PlayStation Plus subscription renewal since they're going to be like $40 a year, which is of course a steal in comparison to like $60 a month. And I don't know, I might bite the bullet for PSVR, but I have so many games right now, so I'm personally debating with that.
It's we talked a little bit about this. What was it, last week or 2 weeks ago now? This idea of this backlog that we all tend to get, where games just keep piling up and piling up. We have no idea what to do with them, and then all of a sudden, holiday season time, all the games are on sale. Well, I want to get more games, especially if they're going to be on sale. So, but it's definitely a great time. Check out GameStop. I know everyone likes to get their stuff digitally. I'm still a huge fan of GameStop, brick and mortar. These Black Friday deals, this is where to get them. This is the time to get them, especially order them online, because if you order them online and pick them up at a store or have it mailed to your house, then you're gonna get it. The likelihood of them running out of your game if you order it online is very slim, unless you're Nintendo trying to sell a Switch in 2017.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's pretty guaranteed, and you get the disc copy, which is something physical you can have, which I personally am a huge advocate for that. I think it's great, and I think it retains the actual. Not retains it, rather it kind of justifies isn't the right word, but I think you get where I'm going. It kind of does that for the actual price, the value of the game, kind of in your hand. But and it takes up less storage on your device. So all around, I mean, great time to get some cheap physical copies of games, save some storage space, or even use Black Friday deals to get more storage space. That's probably what I'll be doing. I need some for my PlayStation and my Switch right now. So I'll definitely be getting some of that. So good stuff there. some not so good stuff though. This past week, we're hearing more stuff about Riot Games and a couple discrimination lawsuits coming their way from an employee and a former employee. This is something that, you know, discrimination right is not a new thing anymore. We knew about this already, but the it's an important piece of news just because of I mean, I see news like this and I think just what is I feel like is it just me, or I feel like recently the gaming industry, as far as from a business standpoint, is just crumbling. Everything is just going down the tubes. Am I just, is this how it's always been and I just haven't been vigilant enough?
Yeah. Well,
No,
what do
I
you think
agree.
about
Like
this, Will?
I can see where he's coming from with that, especially on Microsoft's end. It just feels like they actively choose the worst decision possible sometimes. Well, yeah, I can see where he's coming from.
Hmm. Yeah. And
Well,
with Riot being such a big name in the esports business, I'm kind of concerned that this will like tarnish their business reputation with other partners. Like if they'll want to associate with the business that like abuses their employees, like they're in a frat club or whatever. So
yeah, which by the way, for those of you listening who may not know, the lawsuits are directly because of discrimination against women and sexism in the workplace. What one of the people or one of the employees rather going for a lawsuit says that they recall 500 different occasions where a particular word that is not appropriate but refers to the male genitalia was used. 500 different occurrences that they could scrounge up in their past conversations or recollect offhand, and it's probably even more than that.
wow.
But it kind of keeps the argument going of what exactly is video gaming. And I actually I learned a little bit about it this past week. Actually, totally unrelated, but I just happened to be reading something about it. But it's, you know, the fact that the gaming industry ended up being separated into kind of it was put into kind of like a boys world and marketed towards boys, you know, along the time that they started doing the same thing with toys, because, you know, toys used to be very gender neutral, but then they started separating them in stores between boys and girls, and so it's not it's and so now it's we're still the gaming industry is still trying to climb out of the hole it kind of put itself in, marketing specifically towards boys. They chose a side, and now this is kind of what the ramifications are, if you will.
Yeah.
But sexism in the workplace is definitely something. Riot Games has come out and they've said this is not something we condone. We take it very seriously, but it's hard to, in my opinion, it's kind of hard to take it that way. I feel like, sure, they take it seriously for the press, but do they really look within? They have fired some people since this whole thing started that they think may have been the cause of it. They hired someone or a company rather to look in on their business culture and do all that stuff. But it still seems like that's a hard thing to clean up.
Yeah.
Well, I do think that this is a great opportunity for other companies that aren't Riot Games to look at this and say, like, wait a minute, hold on. So if we take Riot Games Riot Games and we analyze them and we assume that everything they're saying is totally truthful. They did not realize that this was such a big issue. I think this is a great opportunity for companies to look in and say, especially executives, and say, okay, let's look within our own company. Is the same thing happening here and we just don't know it? I feel like this is a good wake up call for the industry, but at the same time, in my mind, I'm just thinking, why did we need this wake up call so much? Why is sexual discrimination such a big issue, and how is it so big in gaming itself? This idea of it's only boys thing. In fact, there's a quote. One of the employees says that their boss once told them that basically gaming is the last safe haven for white teenage boys. Something along those lines. That's not word for word, but that's a pretty outrageous statement. That's very discriminatory.
Well,
But that discriminates against
like most
people who aren't white, aren't teenagers, and aren't boys.
Yeah.
You've created a very niche. So you were using that word a lot, but like a very very strict audience for yourself if you truly believe that, which is so weird for a company like Riot Games to say that, because such a huge part of their fan base is actually like mid-20s, the mid-20 Asian community. So it's
and the demographics,
mind-boggling
like,
how these can be.
and they found the demographics that women play more games than white teenage boys, so looks like they want to like shrink their demographic even more.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to hear a statement like that and not think it's a joke. You know what I'm saying? Like, it had to have been a joke, because this was a higher up in Riot who said this. I mean, they've got to know who plays League of Legends, who plays their games, and yet they're going to make some kind of statement like that. So one of two things is happening. Either one, this guy who's a higher up in Riot is an idiot and has no idea who even plays the game that they're creating, or it was a really terrible joke that discriminated against a lot of people and now is a contributing factor to a lawsuit that they're on the crap end of.
Right.
Right. And I'm going to be 20 next year, so I'm probably going to be outside of that crowd, unfortunately.
Yeah, you cannot play League of Legends anymore. Sorry, Peter, but white teenage boys can play League of Legends. Other than that, everyone else needs to stay away. Stick to, I don't know, Animal
Fortnite.
Crossing. What do 20-year-olds play? I don't know. But anyway, so gaming a lot still along the lines of the gaming industry kind of going downhill. We've got Square Enix now. You know, we've heard about layoffs at DICE after the fail of the relative failure of Battlefront 2. We heard of course about Telltale shutting down very suddenly, and there's a lot of backlash against that. And now Square Enix held a very weird stream the other day, and it was supposed to be kind of like announcing some Final Fantasy stuff and all that, and it was kind of marketed like a really exciting event, and then it just turned out to be like a big bummer.
Yeah.
So they just came out and they basically said, okay, we were working on some Final Fantasy 15 content, and now that's all done. Those DLCs are all done because the director for Hajime Tabata, he left the company, and so all that DLC is canceled. And then on top of that, Square Enix came out and said, hey, we're also in some really kind of serious financial difficulties right now. And basically, this whole stream was one big, hey guys, things are going really crappy right now. But hey, keep playing our games. Bye bye.
At least you're honest.
Yeah. But I don't know what's going on with all of these financial troubles with the gaming industry, because the gaming industry is bigger than it's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It spans so many more countries than it ever has right now. It spans larger demographics, despite what Riot says.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely growing, and it's only going to continue to grow. And yet, all of a sudden, we're hearing about all of these closures of companies, or these financial issues with companies, or these mass layoffs because they're just not making enough money.
Yeah. I mean, like, you of course see the exceptions with, like, Sony getting a 40% increase year on year profits, but like they're like PlayStation, they're like huge. Only if you're like giant companies like do really well, like Activision or EA, they don't really have like a big drops in profits unless they really screw up, like in Battlefront 2, and what we're going to talk about later on with what Blizzard did.
So is this an issue of companies like Square Enix and Telltale? Is this like a pride issue almost, of like we think we're pretty good at this point, so we're going to act like we're these huge companies, but in actuality they're just not? Like they want to go out there, they want to pretend to be a Rockstar or a Sony or an EA, but they just end up falling flat because they're not that big?
Yeah. Well, what do you think of this, Phil? Will?
Well, with Square Enix, like, it was like you said, it was really weird and sort of depressing. They're like, yeah, be excited for new stuff. Oh wait, I guess that's canceled. Play our games, like he said. It was kind of like really depressing, hearing that they basically like wasted like $33 million goofing off in an engine. Like it was kind of depressing overall. Like it does speak towards modern gaming industry wise, I guess you could say. If massive people like Square Enix and even you can consider Telltale massive, are like just going under, like out of nowhere seemingly.
Yeah, I these there seems to be a trend right now of just companies not being able to deliver what they say because of money issues. So, or for other reasons. But so Telltale comes out, they say, they had hinted at some financial difficulties earlier this year, like back in the spring, but we hadn't heard too much about it, just that they were in some financial trouble. But then all of a sudden they go totally off the map, say we're shutting the doors, and meanwhile they had already promised and already set dates that all 4 episodes of The Walking Dead season 4 were going to come out. And now 2 of those episodes, unless Skybound can come in and really put this thing together with some of those former Telltale employees that they've been trying to do to finish the season. But other than that, there's going to be it's going to be a half-finished season forever, and that's just going to be how Telltale's The Walking Dead ends. And then you've got, so this DLC is not getting released. Battlefield 5 is releasing without their Battle Royale. It's just companies not being able to keep up with the promises that they've made for their games.
It's almost like they should delay games a little more.
Definitely. And we've talked about this now for a couple weeks, this idea of delay. Crackdown 3 was like originally supposed to release in don't quote me on this, but 2014 or something like that, or 2012. It's been forever. This thing's been delayed so long, and it's hard to even believe that it's actually going to come out in February. But if it's not finished, why are you going to make an estimate on when it's going to be finished and then act like that is a set date?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a huge problem, this idea of, like, you know what? We're not even close to finished with this game, but you know what? We're just going to throw a date out there, and hopefully it'll generate some excitement. The whole thing seems absurd to me.
Mm-hmm. And it could be like Square Enix and never released them, and like it can take like a decade to release a game, and you never hear about it again. It's just like, but yeah, honestly,
it's kind of the gaming industry just is a little too vocal sometimes. I think that's probably the root of this. Just too much talk, not enough walk.
Mm-hmm.
They've got to slow down the talk to the walk before they can start getting the walk up to what it should be.
Mm-hmm.
But let's head on into probably the biggest news coming out of this past week's, which is why we're saving it to the very end here. But Activision-Blizzard, couple rough things there. First of all, BlizzCon, what a blunder, what a disaster of a conference. That did not go well. They were actually booed. That is.
I mean, don't you guys have phones?
Don't you guys have phones? Oh my goodness. So if you haven't heard, which you must be living under the thickest rock of all time, but if you haven't heard, Blizzard comes out with their BlizzCon conference, and they said we've got a big Diablo announcement, and at the very end, and so everyone's expecting something about Diablo 4 or something along those lines, and especially since it wasn't going to be anything having to do with Diablo 3 releasing on Switch, because it already happened. So this was a pretty big assumption, which in the end is kind of the fault of the gaming industry itself, assuming that it's going to be Diablo 4. But it ends up being Diablo Immortal, which is basically just, mobile Diablo, and nobody asked for it. Huge PC audience they're talking to, and they're saying, yeah, we're going to release this mobile game. Hopefully you like it, and they just get booed on the spot, basically.
Well, it was kind of misleading, so I can see where a lot of the hate came from. But I do think, or I like to think, that they do have something coming up, like something other than like mobile ports coming up. Honestly,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well,
and recently when they said like we have multiple Diablo projects in there, but they also said like, we're gonna double down on like mobile games, and I'm gonna say like, are you gonna do a match 3 Diablo game, or honestly, like, I'm not sure what they're gonna do, like when the PC developer is now focusing more on mobile than PC in the future. It just seems very like out of touch.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that's the big issue surrounding this. It's not just the fact that like Blizzard disappointed its fans in this one instance, but it's this idea that it was so, like you said, so disconnected. Like, what were they thinking? This is not like that. What were they going to expect when they're talking to this kind of fan base? If you ask me, and this goes all the way. This goes back to Square Enix again, and this whole idea of these money issues going on. I think this is another example of like basically a cash grab.
Yeah.
This is, especially so they say they're working on. According to Blizzard, they're working on more mobile games across all of their IPs. which nobody asked for again. So I feel like, and Blizzard usually has been pretty consistent with, but Blizzard isn't a company that I feel like a lot of people hate on a ton. I feel like Blizzard overall is a pretty, they've satisfied their fans pretty well over the years in a lot of different ways, but all of a sudden they're coming out and they're gonna make this huge disaster of an announcement, and I can't help but think this is all driven by one thing, and it's got to be money.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be they're seeing games as a service, and they want in on it big. They are putting all of their chips on the table. They're saying, "Hey, we are going all in on this mobile thing, and then we're going to get money from these mobile games, and then we can make more actual games." It seems like a cash grab to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fine for a company to like say like, oh, we want to make a profit, but if they want to make a profit, they have to like make customers want to buy their product in the first place, rather than saying like, oh, give us money through this means, or else like there's no other way you can like enjoy our product.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of, you know what, we need to turn a profit, so let's release a game that literally is all about profit. We need the profit, so let's just make a game specifically for profit. That makes no sense. That's not the heart of the gaming industry. The heart of the gaming industry is creating experiences that your players that you can't you the key to video games is create an experience that you can't get, that most people don't get in real life and can't get in real life. And then you take that, and of course you're going to need to make money on it. That's just the way the world works. But at the core of it, it's creating those experiences. And players look at that and they say, man, that would be great. That is definitely worth the $60 price tag. And it's a way for us to kind of escape from, it's escapism. It is escape from our lives and go into a totally new world that is original and unique and fun and totally different from what we can do here, and just have fun with it. But this decision seems so disconnected from that idea.
Yeah,
like,
true.
Where did it come from?
And you see companies like Nintendo, or like, as we keep bringing it up, Sony, like when they release the new Mario Kart, the new God of War, they make a lot of money from that, because why? They're really good games. People want to play a really good game. And you see like a God of War breaking records, Mario Kart breaking records, because when you make a good product, it's a big shock, but they make money. It's just
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And that's the real thing that you look at. You look at Nintendo and you say, you know what? Well, maybe it's not a good idea to use an example of a company that develops and releases consoles, but I think Rockstar's a great example.
Yeah.
You know, they have kind of turned towards that games as a service idea with GTA Online, but
the core game is still there.
At the heart of it, this is not how GTA was released, and this wasn't the idea of GTA, and it still really isn't. It's just a byproduct of GTA. This is just something that happened, and Rockstar saw it, and they said, well, if people are willing to pay for it, then let's do it. But other than that, this is not the way that GTA Online started. This is not the way GTA 5 started. The idea of Grand Theft Auto 5, or the series as a whole, was all centered around, again, that core idea of escapism within the industry. Get into a game, because you can't do the same things in real life. You can't experience the same characters, really take yourself into another reality. And that's what the game was built on. And they are doing phenomenally well. We just covered on 2 record-breaking GTA 5, third most bought game of all time. That not too shabby. So
Right.
you look at Blizzard and you think, do they really need this cash grab? What happened to the originality? Can't they just where aren't they coming up with any new ideas? Anything?
Yeah,
Yeah.
honestly, originality in gaming is just. Oh, you were saying, Phil? Will? Sorry, I keep screwing.
Oh, I was just agreeing.
Yeah, and I feel like just originality in gaming is just too risky for a lot of publishers, so that's why they rely on like the Call of Duties, the Overwatches, and like the franchises people recognize the most instead of actually taking new ideas and making them attractive to customers. But
Yeah, I think those when it's dangerous because I think for a lot of companies it's hard to find something that works and then still make it new because you don't want to stray from what works because like you said that's a huge risk. But at the same time
Yeah.
it's too it kills creativity when you go back to the same formula. And once again, I'm going to name drop Rockstar because that's something where they found a formula with their games. A lot of their games play very, very similarly, but it's a new experience every time. There's something original and unique every single time with their games, but they still have it's still at the heart of it a Rockstar game. So they found what works, but they're putting spins on it to develop new IPs and new concepts, if you will, and stories.
I mean, on the bright side, mm, Activision stocks dropped like 8% after the BlizzCon disaster, so maybe that's a message they'll listen to.
Oh yeah, and that it's that it hasn't even stopped there. I think since then it's actually now down over 19%, I believe, around 20%.
Whoa.
It's down. That 7 or 8% was like the initial drop right after, but since then it's really gone downhill, especially with the announcement that they're doing more with mobile games. A lack of creativity is going to be what kills this industry if we're not careful. I think that's what's going to do it. When we get to a point where just every game is the same, we're already starting to see it. This whole idea of battle royale, and it totally disgusts me because I hate seeing ideas that frankly are pretty interesting. The whole idea of battle royale is cool in its own right, but we've got so many of them now. I mean, the Culling tried it. They failed, but they did try it. We've got PUBG, of course, Fortnite, Rust, Call of Duty now, Battlefield's coming out with it. All of a sudden, everyone's doing battle royale. Oh, because again, it's the whole hey, a formula that works. Let's do it to death because go money.
Sort of like
It's
meme culture a little bit. Like a new meme comes out, everyone just abuses it until it's not funny anymore.
yeah. Except I kind of wish battle royale would fizzle out a little uh, as quick as a lot of memes do. Oh man. But any extra thoughts on this because I know this is a pretty industry wide topic.
Well, I think overall, just like whenever you see these publishers chase money rather than listen to what customers say, like what do the people want, I think it ultimately like helps them in the short run but hurts them in the long run. Like when their reputation is sort of damaged, they used to be like Blizzard used to be the really cool company making these awesome experiences with like World of Warcraft, and they recently announced a Warcraft 3 remake, and they still do like cool things, but like when they just drift away from that, they're going to lose that core. They're like the heart of the company. And of course, Activision lost that heart a long time ago. but that's another discussion. Electronic Arts used to be a company that like supported a lot of like really small ideas with Mirror's Edge, or I think they did Singularity, but there's ultimately like they're now more of a Star Wars, Battlefield, FIFA company rather than a company that like introduces like new ideas all the time. Even their new ideas like Anthem is heavily inspired by Destiny and a multitude of other franchises, and so there's even the lack of originality in the new ideas.
Yeah, new ideas are so hard to come by. That's why I'm so thankful for things like I think this. If I were to, I want to name drop a few games. Things like that are coming out, like Control.
Hmm.
I think that has a really cool premise. I think I'm excited. I'm really excited for it. I'm keeping up with it. It's supposed to be coming out this next year. Hopefully, it doesn't get delayed. But it's kind of a new take on or some new gameplay rather, kind of a experimenting with some different things. So I like that. My oh god, what is it called? My Friend Pedro,
Oh
which
yeah,
is like a side scrolling kind of shooter that looks like a bunch of fun. That's something and that's something that really every all of the concepts it doesn't use anything particularly new, but it just does it in such a fresh way. And so games like that are coming out, and like you said, I'm excited for Anthem because I've really liked what BioWare's done, excluding Andromeda. But so I'm really excited for Anthem. But like you said, I mean, a lot of its core comes from games like Destiny, and so it's still not even super original, even though the story that they're gonna put into there, or like some very specific things, like the suits you have and the weapons you use, those are going to be a little unique. But even that, weapons are very reminiscent of just other weapons that have been used in other games, even
yeah,
though they just have different names in other games. I mean, it's just originality is hard to come by, but when you do it right, it's a really really good moneymaker, and you don't have to resort to things like oh hey, we gotta release a mobile game because our our money is down the drain right now.
yeah, and I can pull a few other examples of like upcoming games that take new ideas, like Ghost of Tsushima, like the open world feudal Japan game that like I don't think any company, any game developer has released a game of that caliber in that genre. So that it seems really interesting and cool for me to for it to come out. And
And I think that's another instance of like what I was saying, where this idea of samurais. I mean, you don't see a lot of samurais in video games, but it's still not a new idea in video games. I think it's still it has been explored before in some capacity.
mhm,
Open world is certainly not a new thing. I don't think there are going to be any particularly innovative gameplay mechanics in there that are going to revolutionize anything, but it's just it looks fresh. It looks like it has a certain polish to it, and and it combines everything in a way that is just kind of new,
yeah,
that you've never really had quite that experience before.
it reinvigorates your appetite for like that kind of game. It's pretty cool.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it does. Will, any other thoughts on this?
No, I wasn't familiar with the topic, but yeah, everything you guys said sounds great.
All right, we did it.
All right, and that was the Sick and Wire podcast. A lot of stuff to talk about.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. This has been a great time. keep up with some of this news because it's always developing, and then you can kind of get in on the conversation in the comments. The more you know about it, the more you'll be able to talk about it, raise awareness for different topics. The gaming industry is such a cool one for news and stuff because it's always happening. Yeah. But any final thoughts or last remarks? Any you want to plug any shamelessly plug your social media or anything like that?
If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do that. Peter_J Finaldi, Finaldi. I don't really post too much stuff on there, but I'm there.
No.
All right.
For me.
Nothing from you. All right. So this has been Sick and Wired. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will see you next week. Bye, guys.
See ya.